more close to an actual sword. It's a shinai is a straight bamboo stick, and a bokken is curved just like the samurai sword, and it's solid. It feels more like a samurai sword. As far as the length goes, I think because the samurai sword arts aren't so popular in general, they're pretty esoteric. Manufacturers tend to make shinai one length, and they tend to be around 2 feet in length. You could sometimes find differences if it's like a specialty company, but they tend to be around 2 feet in length. That seems to be the standard. It's actually 2 shaku is the proper measurement for a samurai sword, a daito or a long sword, and a shoto, a short sword, would be like 1 shaku in length, the blade length.
What was the move you were doing before resheathing the sword?
Okay, the resheathing the sword, that's called noto. Noto is sheathing. Oh, probably the chibuti, when I'm whipping it around and hanging it. Okay. The chibuti is blood. Basically, if you're a samurai and you just unfortunately decapitated someone, you have blood on your blade. And if you were to sheathe the blade with the blood on the blade, it would get sticky, and you wouldn't necessarily be able to draw it again so easily, because it would be sticking into your saya, or your sheath, so your scabbard. So that's what the deblooding is. There are all kinds of pretty debloods. One where you slam it, you basically hit on top of the pommel or the kashire, and then you whip around the excess blood and then sheath it in. And the other way, when you're doing the noto, or the actual sheath itself, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I take my fingers and I grip the sword tightly, and I bring it through my fingers. So along the blood groove, which is the heat, I take the rest of the blood off as I put it in. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Another thing you may notice, when I was doing my sword cut to my form, I never actually look at the sword. I usually look at the blade ahead. I'm not looking at what I'm doing here. It's all actually done by feel. So if you want to see what, let's say I take a basic draw and cut. That's my chibuti, my blood, and this will whip off the blood in it. And when I grab it tightly here. This is the ha. This is the part of the blade that would hurt me. This is the mune of the back of the blade. Okay? So when I grab it, and this is the blood groove. When I grab it along where the groove is, and all the excess blood will just drip off, and then just slide right in. And then I shoot. Okay? So that's the chibuti and the noto. Basically, the 3 major aspects of Ei are nugadashi, which is the draw, chibuti, which is the deblood, and noto, which is the sheath. And there are a lot of different methods of all 3. Drawing methods, deblooding methods, and sheathing methods. And you see a difference actually between Japanese sword systems and Okinawan sword systems. And there's actually this great difference between actually Okinawa and Japan in terms of the evolution of the martial arts. The Okinawan systems tend to be more Chinese influenced because actually after the Battle of Sekigahara, which is in 1600, after the Tokugawas came into power, the first, you could say, edict of Tokugawa Ieyasu was to conquer Okinawa with his Shimazu clan. So he sent his samurai to Okinawa and take it over. Prior to that, Okinawa was part of China. I believe it was part of the Ming Dynasty. And so basically, a lot of the Okinawan martial arts, so including the samurai sword, are influenced from the Chinese martial arts. So you see a difference in the way you draw the sword, the way you deblood the sword, and the way you sheath the sword. So, and then there are different preferences in terms of how you'd like to do that, but they all have to be safe and proper sword protocol, you could say. Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me handle that one first. Okay. You always thought with the Japanese sword you use both hands. Okay. Actually, the katana, which basically means single edge, um, is used with one or two hands. It's made to be used with two. However, you can use it with one hand. In fact, when you do Nito Waza, which is the use of two swords, you use, obviously I don't have four hands, so I'd have to use one with my right and one with my left simultaneously. And just to give you an idea, I brought up a wakizashi, a short sword, so you could see it. It's about half the length of my katana. And you'll notice also the handle is almost half the length or so, because it's made to be used in tandem with the katana. So basically you can use the katana with one or two hands, and however though, to get good cutting power, you need to use two hands. If you want to do a decapitation or cut off a limb, you need to use two hands. And if you're another thing that samurai swordsmen like myself do is we cut tatami, which are mats. And so what we do is we string together mats the thickness of the human neck, and then you work on cutting them. And some Japanese in the past, actually it's unfortunate, Japanese in the past would do this on prisoners. They'd work these techniques to refine their cuts. They do it on animals. But the modern day samurai like myself, we use mats and tatami, and we cut mats. And you need two hands to do it, and you've got to use proper technique to do it. Otherwise, you're going to bounce that off the tatami. But what was your other question? Yeah. Okay, what context would you use the seated position? Well, aside from the fact that I think the Seiza-Nobu forms that I was doing, the seated warrior forms, aside from the fact that they're aesthetically pleasing, and that's actually why I showed them today, and they're very difficult to do, and they challenge me personally. The seated forms were the kind of techniques that, well, the seated techniques, were the kinds of techniques that a samurai would use if they were eating. Because when you eat, you sit in that position in Seiza. And they typically, a samurai who would, go into someone else's household, depending upon, again, what their relationship was with, the head of the house, they would typically, at the least, have their wakizashi by their side, so the short sword, just in case of imminent attack, okay? If you were untrusting of your environment, and you went to someone's house that, you weren't quite sure about, you may have your katana as well. In any case, those seated techniques would be used so it was at a time when you were eating, or relaxing, or meditating. There are techniques, by the way, where your sword is not seated up at your side, the sword's on the ground, and you just take it and go into action. And there are other techniques where the sword is affixed to your person, on your belt, and then you can use it there. So that's what the seated techniques were for. There are also something we call shiko waza, or in Okinawan dialect, shinki waza. Kneeling and moving, these are knee walking techniques. So we actually move with the sword, and we do techniques as well. So if for some reason, for example, many people have asked me, why do you do techniques on your knees and you move around with them? Well, it's because, let's say, for example, there was a 3-foot wall, and you were here, and then suddenly you disappeared, and you wanted to come up over there. You could go on your knees and boom, pop on up. So you needed to know how to pop up right into action, or if you're on your knees, you also need to know how to respond on your knees. So, okay, there are other techniques where if I'm sitting down, for example, let's say I'm eating, and someone just comes up to me and attacks me, I cut their legs off. You see, that's the kind of thing you're probably thinking about. There are other techniques, and I didn't perform them today. There's some techniques, for example, where there is a ledge. There's a form called tanashita, which means beneath the ledge. And you actually jump up and suddenly show your face and cut, and then you go back down again. They're very interesting techniques. Yes.
Why is your scabbard secured at two places?
I'm sorry, why is my scabbard what?
Secured at two places.
In two places? Okay, actually I'll talk about my scabbard and how I wrap it and everything. When you say it's secured, why is it knotted? What do you mean secured?
Well, it's how it's staying here and why is it over there, yeah.
I'm sorry, say it again?
Why is it secured there and... No, not just on the left side, but why is it knotted there and there?
Okay, I'll explain it, sure.